Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. I am your host, Garrett Price, and we are doing a one quarterback rookie mock. Now, I know some of you hardcore guys are like, I drafted my rookie team like a month and a half ago. Why are we doing rookie drafts now? Well, there's a lot of people that have still not done their rookie drafts, and especially more along the lines of 1QB leagues. We see those tend to be more of the old school leagues. Nothing wrong with that. I have a couple myself. So with that, I brought in three of our amazing writers to help me with this one quarterback rookie mock draft with the 2025 class. First, we have our guy, John Hammersmith. John, how you doing?
Doing well. Thank you, Garrett. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Glad to have you, man. We've also got Tristan Cook. Tristan is the head of our college/Devy department. Tristan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's almost football season.
Absolutely. Cannot wait. We are in the dog days of summer right now, which only means football is truly right around the corner. Last but certainly not least, you definitely recognize this guy from Roster Rescue. We've got Mr. Taylor Christianson. Taylor, how's it going?
Hey, Garrett. Great to be back. Excited to be chopping it up here with Tristan and John. I know that we're going to have a good time today.
For sure. So let's get right into it. We're not going to waste a lot of time. John, you're the newest of the crew, so I allowed you to have the 1-1. Probably a layup, but curious to see who you pick.
Well, yeah, I won't get spicy here. It's an obvious pick. It's one I've been making a lot. It's Ashton Jeanty here at the 101. Can't go wrong. He solidified it as the 106 pick in the actual NFL draft, and I don't have a whole lot to say other than don't
He's good.
overthink this in a one quarterback league.
Absolutely. All right, Tristan, you got the second pick. This has seemed to be another pretty easy one, but I have seen once or twice this go a little different than people might expect. And I know that you're a fan of a certain team and a certain player. So are you going to shock the world with the 102 pick?
I think I am.
Here we go.
I'm going Travis Hunter. If I'm picking at 102, unless I traded for the pick, I don't think I want to take a running back over a wide receiver when I view Travis Hunter as a better prospect on his own. I wouldn't hate anybody. Omarion Hampton goes 102 in most of these. It's not that it's a bad pick, but if I'm rebuilding a roster, I think I'm taking the wide receiver over a running back that early. Not Ashton Jeanty. I get that he's in a tier of his own, so I certainly don't have any issue there. But after him, I think Travis Hunter is worthy of 102, and I'm not going to get him on my next pick, so I got to get my guy.
All right. Well, I think that makes your pick pretty easy then, Taylor. Or are you going to surprise us as well?
No, I'm going to go with Omarion Hampton. However, I would say that in a one quarterback, if someone thinks that there's a drastic tier break between Hampton and TreVeyon Henderson, and you still have full point PPR, I would be interested to hear what that plus is. So I'm taking Hampton, but I don't think the drop from him to Henderson is nearly what other people think. So if I can get an early second on top or something like that, then I'm happy. Even in a one quarterback, if I can get an early second, there's some guys there that I like. So I would be willing to drop out of Hampton, but give them to me at 3.
No, I hear you. And that leaves Henderson for me. I had a feeling no matter where I put Tristan, as long as I didn't put him 101, that was going to allow TreVeyon Henderson to be at 104 for me, which made me very, very happy in this scenario because I think you're absolutely right, Taylor. I think there's not a huge gap between the two. I do think Omarion Hampton is probably the slightly better choice. I see this guy as a 16, 17, 1,800-yard potential on-the-ground type of guy in the future. I think that highly of him, the offense, in the scheme that's there, the offensive line, all of that. It's beautiful. But TreVeyon Henderson, I think, is going to be an absolute monster in the receiving game. This is an ascending offense, so I am in on TreVeyon Henderson. So that brings us back to John. John, you've got the 105 here. We've seen a couple players that could have maybe gone that haven't gone yet. Who's your pick at 105?
So I was in this exact same situation in a one quarterback league, and I was really, really hoping for Henderson, and that was the long shot. But I went with McMillan. I like him over Judkins. Same thing like Tristan was saying. I like the idea of this high volume wide receiver. He's going to have at least, in my opinion, 110, 120 targets on the season, and that's the type of floor I'm willing to take, even over Judkins' volume. I think he'll get it. I just not convinced about the efficiency right now, and the long term clouds his talent a little bit to me. I've seen a lot of talented backs get stuck behind a rough team.
I hear you. As a Browns fan, I'd love to dispute it, but I can't. All right. Tristan, that puts you back on the clock at 106.
It does, and it worked out perfectly for me. My pick is Quinshon Judkins, and I was hoping that I could get a running back at 6 because I think these 6 picks in one QB leagues are basically going to be the same. The order might shift slightly, but I think that at 106, you're guaranteed to get one of these guys. And since I went Hunter, I was happy to get, what I think is a high quality running back in a team that probably is going to lean on the run quite a bit.
Absolutely. All right. I view this very similar. It kind of puts us in a new tier. So for you, Taylor, where do you go with this not being super flex? This is not tight end premium. What route do you go here at 107?
Yeah, this is a huge drop off. At least that's how I feel. As after Judkins and McMillan go, I pretty much feel like I would either want to trade away my pick for future capital or try to get a proven veteran at this point. I don't like the running backs that are left on the board, not at this stage. So I'm looking at wide receiver or taking one of the best tight ends. I don't mind Tyler Warren. He's definitely worth consideration, even in a non-premium, because of everything he can bring to the table. But I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka. I think Egbuka is probably the pick that has the most potential left of the players on the board. I think he could be an ascending asset in the next year or two, maybe even, if he gets strong mid-season, he could go into next year with a third or fourth round startup capital. I can see that opportunity for him. So give me a player like that in the middle of the first round who can at least return a future first or more.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And that kind of helped me because I was trying to decide, would I go with Emeka or would I go with the guy that I ended up obviously taking here at 108? I got Kaleb Johnson here. There's an argument to be made about RJ Harvey, and I know there's probably some people that are very surprised that RJ Harvey has not gone yet with the second round draft capital, with landing in Denver, but I was a little lower on him as a prospect. I saw him more as a fourth round talent as opposed to end of the second round type talent. And then when they added J.K. Dobbins to the mix, that was enough for me to say, I'm going to be a little more bearish than other people are on this player. I'm willing to not take the risk here and take a guy that I think is going to be in an offense. It's going to feature him, that's going to use him quite a bit. And we've seen this stylistic fit for the Steelers for years. When you look at the guy that are replaced in Najee Harris or Rashard Mendenhall or Jerome Bettis, like this team just seems to have that physical downhill runner. They're going to get that in Kaleb Johnson, but I think he's a little bit better in the receiving game than people give him credit for as well. So that wraps us back around to John Hammersmith. Hammersmith, by the way, fantastic last name. Love it. Kind of jealous, honestly. So 109 here. Are you going to take RJ Harvey, or is there another route that you're going to go?
I'm going with RJ Harvey for a lot of the reasons that you said is why I would take Kaleb Johnson over him and have taken Kaleb Johnson over him. Actually been even seeing Harvey in the early second at times. But going to that, in a one quarterback league, I want the running back that I know is going to get the volume. J.K. Dobbins brings some uncertainty to some of that ceiling, I think, that we were looking at. But this is still Dynasty. I'm drafting this guy for his, hashtag, 2 to 4 years, and let's see what we can get out of it.
Love it. All right, Tristan, 110. Who are you going with?
I think a lot of people here would lean towards tight end. I tend to shy away from taking early drafted tight ends in rookie drafts just because I think that you can get similar production in the later rounds because tight end is a challenging position to project. So I would rather a bigger upside play, which is who I'm going to go with, and that is Matthew Golden. I was not the biggest Matthew Golden fan, so I like kind of what Taylor said earlier. I'd probably be trying to trade out here. I suppose the quarterback or Cam Ward really could be in the discussion also, but not for me on a 1 QB league. So it was kind of take a first round wide receiver on a team that doesn't really have an established wide receiver one, but has a quarterback that we all seem to like. So I think that the potential is there. We've said that for a lot of years with a lot of Packers receivers. So, I'm not in love with this pick, but I think it's a pick that at the end of the first, you kind of have to bank on that draft capital and what we perceive as a good offense, a good quarterback, and a good coach. And so I went with Matthew Golden.
Nice. All right. Taylor, who you got here?
I'm running up to the draft table and smashing the button for Tyler Warren. I would have taken him a few picks earlier. I hear what Tristan is saying. You can get production from your tight end later on in drafts a lot of times. But to me, Tyler Warren is just a whole different animal. He's got the ability to do anything on an offense, really. And for the Colts, who are still looking for an offensive identity, who have some run game, but not a lot in the passing game, they might look to get him involved around the line of scrimmage. They could do some quick shovels to him. Literally, we could see this guy getting 8 to 10 touches a week, just manufactured however they can get him the ball. And he has the draft capital. He doesn't have, Michael Pittman's there. Josh Downs is there, but those guys aren't commanding targets, I don't think. So whoever is behind center, I think will look for Tyler Warren, and he'll probably be one of the most targeted early on, like rookie tight end candidates that we've seen in a long time. At least that's how I'm projecting him to be heavily used very early on.
So I totally agree with you, and I went with the other tight end in the first round. You get a first-round player like that, you know that they are going to be used to some extent. We'll have to see. I know I didn't say it. Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland is who I took here. He was the only other first-round tight end. But if you didn't know that, it's Colston Loveland. But with that, I know it's a crowded room right now in Chicago. But in a year or two, this could clear itself up pretty quickly. The amount of draft capital used on him, you feel pretty good about. Both this offensive coordinator and, of course, Ben Johnson, both these guys have had experience in some offenses that have had some pretty talented tight ends that have used the tight end quite a bit. And so I think long-term, this is not a short-term play. But if I'm at 112, I mean, guys, clearly I'm the champ. You guys were all picking in front of me. I'm picking at 112. So I'm the champion here. I can afford to wait a little bit longer on a player to develop. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some heart picks that I wanted to take here, but I stuck with the probably the safer play.
Did you say heart picks or bad picks?
No, Tristan, I said heart picks, as in I love them and you're a jerk. Okay, at 201, John, you're up, man.
Well, coming back around as the 201, I'm the worst team in the league. So, I got to look at kind of what does that mean? So I think taking Cam Ward at this position makes sense, probably for my team, even though it's one quarterback. I personally like to take more positional players typically, but I could very much see the 101 player in the draft being much better than a lot of people want to give him credit for. I think that this is a person who worked himself up. He was, he went to Incarnate Word. He was a zero? Am I correct in that? A 0-star recruit to work his way all the way up to the 101 pick. This tells me that he's got work ethic. We've seen his charisma, his leadership, his hustle on the field. Will it translate? I don't know, but at a 201 pick in a draft for a quarterback, I'm going to take that swing here.
Makes perfect sense. I was curious to see when the first quarterback would go. I didn't assume it would be first round, but I figured it would be somewhere early in the second. So not surprised to see him go here. Tristan, are you going to take the second quarterback off the board, or are you going to take the smart pick and take Cam Skattebo?
I'm going to do neither of those things. I like to not take picks that I'm going to regret immediately, and that's what Skattebo would be for me. But I am a little torn. It's just with neither of the two players you mentioned here. So the two players I'm deciding between are Luther Burden and Jack Bech. I'm going to go with Jack Bech simply because basically what you just explained with the the Colston Loveland pick, there's just a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago. I know there's been rumors that DJ Moore might get traded. Rome Odunze is unproven, but a lot of people are excited about his potential. Loveland that you mentioned. So there's just a lot to go into what could be to see Burden become successful. I think Bech has a lot easier route to fantasy success. So that's why he's my pick.
Perfect. All right, Taylor, who you got here at 203? Are you going to break my heart?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to take Skattebo. It's not my fault. Tristan took Bech, so I would have taken him. I'm taking Jack Bech over Skattebo in all formats, rebuilding or contending. But right after him comes Skattebo. And I think, especially in one quarterback, getting a running back with his profile, his essentially guaranteed touches is how I'm looking at him. Looking at what Tracy brings to the table for the Giants, I think Skattebo has positioned himself to definitely have a role early on. So if I can get a production return as well as someone who, like you, Garrett, might be willing to send me a first down the road for him because he's your guy. I mean,
after a 1,400-yard season, I probably will. So
if there's a hot name, especially in Dynasty, grab him, but look to flip him quick. Like that's how I would probably view Skattebo, to be honest with you. I would probably be flipping him to you for a future first if I could just send him and a second or something and see if I could do that. That'd be my move with him. But I do like taking him and seeing what he becomes as far as an actual NFL player.
No, it's a very good pick. And once again, this saved me because I actually technically have Jayden Higgins ahead of Cam Skattebo in my rankings. And so it was another one where I was like, am I gonna actually have to go against my rankings? Because realistically, I probably would have. But now I don't have to. Jayden Higgins was still there on the board. This guy has a little bit of a capped ceiling compared to some other guys simply because there's not a path to really be the number one. It's Nico Collins. He's going to be the guy. Jayden Higgins actually profiles as a very similar player. This is great news for CJ Stroud, but we've seen offenses have multiple receivers as top 12 guys, but if not at least top 18, top 24 guys. So I think he's got all of the talent and the ability and now the situation to be a very, very good real life number two, but eventually maybe even a fantasy football number two as well. So John, you're back at the clock here at 205.
205, that Higgins brings kind of a teardrop for me too. So a lot of times I'd be looking back on the board, trying to get more capital or kind of move back into stay in the same tier of players that I like right now. Since I can't do that, I'm going to reach for the ceiling and take Luther Burden. Once again, there's just too much potential there. Early on, when I was really looking at tape and not just effort, I thought talent-wise, he was the guy. Like I thought he had that ability to really be something special at the next level. As I dug in, the process went out. He fell down boards, and then he still got this second round capital from a team that is right now very hyped, very hot, and they were banging the table for him. Antoine Randall ran out of the room. He's so excited. So that's where I'll throw this chip into Luther Burden, and I don't see any way if he gets the opportunity and takes it that he doesn't succeed. It's just, does he do that?
Yeah, well, and I don't think anybody's going to argue the talent, and especially at this point in the draft, we're kind of at the midpoint now of the second round, and here, at least for me, I don't know about you guys, but floor kind of goes out the window. I don't really care that much about floor anymore. I'm worried about ceiling, and I think this is one of the best ceiling type plays that you can get here. So at 205, I think that's a really good value, even though I'm tentative on the player. You can't deny the ceiling.
If I want to go more comfortable, I would take in Harris. But, that's
Okay.
I feel you got more of a floor there. But to your point, shoot for the ceiling. I like Burden because if he gets that role, there's something special there.
Awesome. You almost got the guy that you were considering between with your last pick there, Tristan.
I did.
Almost worked out beautifully. So who's your backup playing here at 2-6?
I'm taking Tre Harris. It's interesting to hear that perspective because to me, I think Tre Harris has the lower floor and potentially the higher ceiling. But I think Burden, like I said, I considered him earlier. I just think we've seen more from Burden through his college career than we have of Tre Harris being successful. And Tre Harris went to a team that we expect to be less favorable to wide receivers. I mean, they've got Ladd McConkey, and I don't know that Harris is going to do a ton to dethrone him as the top receiver there. This is another position I kind of don't like picking here, so it's interesting to see that spot play out like kind of 2 times in a row. But I went with Tre Harris. I think that, the upside is there. I might, if I couldn't trade the pick, I might try to trade him as soon as he has a big week, or if he has a big week, I guess I should say. But I think the draft capital again makes it, a fine pick. I don't love the pick, but I think it was a pretty easy choice for me here.
Perfect. All right, Taylor, who you got here at 2-7?
I guess we're all going to get our favorite flavor here. Everyone's kind of taking the wide receiver that was their, top guy in this tier. I would say there's a bit of a tier drop from Luther Burden down to who I'm taking, but Kyle Williams, I think, has as much of a ceiling as the guys we're mentioning based on the team that he's on and with Drake May and, having a new offense there, them investing in him in the draft. I think he's going to get every opportunity to become, a volume receiver for them. And in PPR, especially one quarterback, to get someone this late in the second round who could become the wide receiver 2 early on in the season for his team, I think that's pretty powerful. And with Stephon Diggs' future and just overall play questionable, who knows what Williams' actual potential could be. He could become the next great New England slot guy. I don't know. We'll take whatever I can get from him. But I think he's definitely worth the swing here, and I'm trying to scoop him up in pretty much all my rookie drafts, and it does seem like he's a name that's heating up. I've been able to trade him to get up to better players in a couple of deals as well. So I recommend anyone trying to take a stab at Williams. His ADP was really low for a while, so he was going like early 3rd for some drafts, and I think it's crept up there now. I'm not sure on Sleeper exactly. It's probably in the mid-2nd now though. So you gotta choose to draft him now before he had a pretty big discount.
No, I loved the Kyle Williams discount there for a little bit, and it's a wide open room as far as possible players that could be available for that team. So I like Kyle Williams quite a bit. I think this is a good pick. I ended up going with the New York tight end here, Mason Taylor. Really liked his game overall. Even felt like a guy that still had some left that he hasn't really shown yet. Seems like he's still developing, still maturing, still growing, and obviously the bloodlines are incredible for this guy. And when you look at the Jets right now, I mean, who's going to catch the football? Garrett Wilson, and then I don't know. Like he could be the next guy that we see a Sam Laporta type season out of, where we don't necessarily see it coming. He was not a first-round draft pick, but right situation, right team, and all the cards just kind of fall in place, and he has a really, really big year 1. So I don't need for him to have a big year 1, but it also wouldn't shock me either. So, John, you're back on the clock at 2-9.
Well, that's why I put 2. You always have 2 picks ready because you're going to get sniped if you only have 1. Mason Taylor, a great pick there. But that's why I'm going to go with Bhayshul Tuten. He's a running back who I really liked early on in the process, way before his 40 time shot him up and made him this darling. But regardless of a fumble, I'm not gonna be afraid to go and grab him. I still think there's opportunity for him to be the lead back in that system. I think he's one who kind of has traits all around, rather than he's someone who you can run in the middle. He's someone who can catch passes. He's a little more, I think, tougher than Etienne, and maybe probably a little more versatile than Tank. So not as versatile as Allen, but I still think he's going to get a nice chunk in that offense eventually, or he's at least at this point a person who I'm willing to bet on at this part of the draft.
Absolutely. Tristan, you couldn't wait to get this guy. I saw you highlight him in ever since your last pick. I almost took him just to be a jerk, but I was like, no, you go ahead. So who'd you take here at 210?
I went with Jaxson Dart. I think that, a first round quarterback, even in a one QB league rather than super flex at the 210 is a great value. And who's left on the board, I don't love any of them. So I think this is a perfect spot to take a guy that, in a one QB league, I'm shooting for an upside play here because I'm sure I have a starter. But I think he's got a better chance of hitting than most of the rest of the guys on the board as far as a high value asset. So I went Jaxson Dart. We'll see what happens here, in New York for him, but I'm happy to get that pick there.
Taylor Christianson, you're up at 211.
Yeah, this is where the draft gets pretty difficult for me. We talked about looking for upside. I'm very rarely a position of need kind of drafter, but when you get into one quarterback, a lot of times there's not as many options towards the end of the draft. So if you're doing a 0 running back build, this is where I'd kind of start to just hammer at any running back that's on your board. Just kind of collect them all. Hope one of them hits. That's kind of the scatter shot approach that I like to take if I have a couple of picks in this range. So with that said, I'm just going to start it off with Dylan Sampson. I would just hope that he has a role with Judkins there. If Judkins, for some reason, isn't able to do well or gets injured, I think Sampson could immediately step in and be an average, NFL running back. So I'm happy to take a guy like that as a sort of like a handcuff with some upside. Definitely a mystery box. We see a lot of these players break. So this is one of those potential bust spots. But I don't think you're getting much at the end of the second round in a 1 QB.
Yeah, I felt the same way about my pick here. The end of the second round in 1 QB, it's almost to the point, not quite, but almost to just take whoever you like. There's really no great advantage at this point over a lot of the other players. And so I decided to shoot for the ceiling with Jalen Milroe. Do I expect Milroe to be even a starting quarterback? Not necessarily. I'm not sure that he has the passing chops to be able to do it. But on the off chance that he is, it's similar to Justin Fields. If you were to ask, how did Justin Fields do last year? And it'll be like, well, he was in Pittsburgh. He didn't do that great. He got replaced by week 6. But you look at his fantasy points and you're like, well, he averaged over 19 points per game. And it's because of his rushing ability. That's the same thing with Milroe. You could argue that Jalen Milroe could come into the NFL and be one of, if not the best running quarterback in the NFL. He's got that build. He's got that size. He's got that speed. It's all there for him. So don't anticipate it, but on the off chance he does, I want to have him. John, you're up at 301.
So we keep saying ceiling, and I think that's kind of, my motto during this draft is looking at guys like Terrance Ferguson, and looking at his situation, where he's gone to, his talent. Right now, put him in the Rams with Sean McVay. He's putty. We don't know what we have yet, but he can turn him into gold. And I think that's kind of why I'm taking him here, and why I've been taking him, is because there's an offense, there's a system, and we've seen guys like Tyler Higbee do it. What happens if you get a man of this athleticism into that position? We were hoping with Everett, never really transpired, but I think Ferguson has that same potential.
Awesome. All right, 302, Tristan.
Here I went with Jaylin Noel. this is as Taylor was saying, this is kind of a spot where you start picking your guys. And I think a third round wide receiver on an offense that I think we like is good. We talked about how Higgins kind of profiles more similarly to Nico Collins. And I think Jaylin Noel could be a nice complement to that kind of a role. He wasn't drafted that much later, so I think that he's got plenty of draft capital to get on the field. It is a risky pick because he could also end up being like the fourth or fifth option on that offense before too long. So I went with him here, just hoping to see some early production, and yeah.
I was kind of surprised because we got Jayden Higgins as a early second rounder, but then Noel ended up being like a late third rounder. And I actually had Noel ahead nerd score wise of Jayden Higgins. So I thought they were going to go real close together. I was surprised at the NFL gap between those two guys. So, but I think that's a good pick here. A lot of upside. Taylor, who you got here at 303?
I'm going to go with a tight end and take Elijah Arroyo. I think he's got a ton of upside as far as a, NFL physical build. What could he do on an NFL field if someone wanted to throw him the ball and he was schemed open? Like, I think he has a fantasy profile that could hit. However, he's in an unknown offense right now. We don't know what it's going to look like with the new quarterback situation. They're supposed to have a running identity. He could definitely take the early path of sitting for his whole rookie season mostly, or barely seeing the field, and then kind of working his way in. We've seen that with Trey McBride, Ben Sinnott, so many guys through the years where we kind of like them as a fantasy option, but their first year or two, they really don't even get to see the field. I wouldn't be shocked if that's what happened with Arroyo, but I still think it's worth taking him at this spot. And if he does get in and does well, this is going to be a theme for me. Can I send him in a third for David Njoku? Can I package him up with a first and get Sam Laporta? Like, whatever it is at the time that I need to do it. If I can use him as a trading up piece with his youth and having just a little bit of camp buzz, those are the kind of guys I want to use. It's just as good as having a future third or second round pick if you can find the leverage in a deal with those guys. So.
Yep, I like it. The big thing for him in his profile was the injuries, because you watch the tape and the tape looks good, but the injuries are the biggest thing with him. I went with Pat Bryant here. Really liked the opportunity for this kid. I was a little higher on him than consensus. Now, I wasn't necessarily third round. That still kind of surprised me a little bit, but I liked the player, and I thought he had pretty good movement skills for a bigger guy. And then I saw that he went to the Broncos, a team that is looking for some more wide receiver help. Profile is very similar to a Courtland Sutton. So he could, if he performs well, could end up being the heir apparent to a guy like Courtland Sutton. So I just think his value right now is very good as a third round wide receiver, being able to get him actually in the third round here. So I'm going to take Pat Bryant of the Denver Broncos. John, that puts you on the clock.
Excellent. You did not take my guy in this situation.
Dang it.
So right now, definitely looking for people who are players that I can draft that they're not necessarily I need to find their upside. As Taylor even kind of referenced, it's like, is there a player that I feel like I could see a pathway soon that I may be able to use as a chip for something in the future? To me, I love these running backs, like running backs that I could see something quick and camp some buzz and allow me to capitalize quick on that. I'm going to take Devin Neal. And one of the reasons why I like Devin Neal so much is I can see that path very clearly to him earning the backup job to Kamara, and then anything can happen after that. I mean, we've all been in those seasons where it's like having those running backs and having those in position. So then I have that flexibility either to use him as my player for a team that is making a run, or use him to get the value at the time to another team, or cast him off if I'm not truly in that position to contend at the time, knowing how fluid that value could be. Yeah, so that's why I'm going to take Devin Neal. I see the vision of him getting there. I like the player, and I don't care about where he fell into the draft or like how far he fell down at this point. I care more about the team that he's with the opportunity.
Love it. Great pick there. Tristan, you going to the tight end well here?
I am. This worked out perfectly from what I said earlier about not going tight end in the first. I went with Harold Fannin here. I liked him just like I had him as my tight end 3, I believe, for the majority of the season. The last year coming into the draft, I don't think there's, from a fantasy production potential, much difference between him and the top 2 guys in this class. I mean, if you watched him play this last year, he was by far the best tight end in college football, even though, he didn't end up winning that award. We've seen the Browns, favor tight end production. David Njoku isn't particularly young. And this is where, I don't expect anything from Fannin right away. So that might be where you see the earlier guys getting earlier production. But I wouldn't be surprised if Harold Fannin Jr. ends up being a plug and play tight end every week in a few years. And he's got the receiving upside to do that. He doesn't necessarily have the full tight end game that makes him a first round NFL prospect, but I don't need him to be a first round NFL prospect. I need him to catch passes. And he can do that with the best of them in this class.
All right. Some bold claims there. All right, Taylor, who you got here at 307?
So this is a bit of a disclaimer. I'm looking at this last year's NFL draft, a lot of the draft stock for the running backs, and I'm kind of just giving them all a round boost. I'm kind of thinking that NFL GMs knew there was a huge amount of talented running backs coming in. They understood we don't have to pick them early. So if a guy goes in the 4th or 5th, maybe he would have gone in the 3rd round in previous years. If a guy gets traded up for in the 3rd, maybe we should have alarm bells going off in our head. With that said, I'm going to go with Woody Marks. I think that the Texans, we've talked about offense, trying to figure it out. They brought in some more talent, obviously. Great. I'm glad that they have Nick Chubb now on the roster to go with Joe Mixon. But I still think that there's a lot of pass catching ability that Marks has that could really get featured in 3rd downs, short yardage. And if I can get a guy who's got some potential for a flex role, and I can see that pathway, like John was saying, you can kind of see how they're going to get used on their team and that there's some fantasy potential there. I'm going to take a swing on that guy. And I think, just blanket statement, I'm happy to take any running back left on the board from here to the end of the draft. That's just kind of how I feel from here on out. Once you get to all these names and all the top receivers and mid-tier receivers are gone, I'm just going to collect as many of these rookie running backs as I can and see who pops.
Yeah, I tend to have a similar philosophy overall, where later on in drafts, I just want a lot of players that I'm going to know what to do with. So running back tends to be that position. I'm never going to know when I'm going to be able to start my 9th wide receiver on my team, but I'm going to know pretty quick when I can play that running back and when I can't. So similar concept here. I took Jarquez Hunter. I think this is more of an indictment on Blake Corum than it necessarily is on Kyren Williams. But we also know that some teams aren't always willing to pay the running back, and Kyron's going to be needing a contract here soon. And Jarquez Hunter, after seeing the video of Sean McVay's reaction of being like, there's one guy I want today, this is the guy that I want, really got me excited about Jarquez Hunter and the possibility. He fits their mold, slightly undersized running back that isn't a physically superior back to a lot of other backs, but does a lot of things the right way, as a smart back, can kind of do a little bit of everything. He fits that mold real nicely. So I like getting Jarquez Hunter here at 3.8. John, who's up for you?
Well, I'm going to go back to the other person I had sitting there at 305, because I never can draft him here, which is why I have 0 shares of him, and that's Jaden Blue. I feel like he's always going in the 2nd round, always way too early for them, what I'm comfortable with. But I would be honest, if he was sitting here more often, I probably would have more shares. I feel like he's got a skill set that can be utilized at the NFL. He's going to a team that's going to have opportunity to want to try and use it. It's just how much and is it effective? I don't know. And so that's why I would definitely take him here. To me, I think like we've been saying, it's just there's so much opportunity. That's what I want at this point. I'll take that. I don't think it's going to work out, but I have no problem taking that risk here at this part of the draft.
Absolutely. Are you going to stick with the running back trend here, Tristan?
I am. Jayden Blue made my decision real easy because I was struggling between Jayden Blue and the guy that I ended up taking. Similar to the round before when you took Pat Bryant, Garrett, I was hoping he would fall, but then it made my Harold Fannin pick real easy. I went with Trevor Etienne. I know he's your favorite player, Garrett, just like Cam Skattebo is mine. You might be surprised to hear that at the
one's clearly better than the other, but that's fine.
At the 310, I was able to get a guy that was drafted 9 picks, I believe, after a guy that went at the 203. So
Tom Brady was taken in the 6th round. Sometimes people just don't always see the greatness.
Yeah, they don't always, and sometimes they're just not great. But
somebody's not.
Having said that, I don't feel particularly good about the Carolina running back situation. I mean, Jonathan Brooks, I don't know that you can count on him to have an NFL career of any substance with the ACL tear. He could come back. It's not like a career-ending injury like it may have been decades ago, but it's also not his first one. Chuba Hubbard, I think we know what he is. I was higher on Trevor Etienne, I know, than you were, but I'm thrilled to get him at the end of the 3rd round with a real opportunity to see the field early. And, it wouldn't shock me if he outperformed, certain other running backs that were drafted in his round in a 2 to 3 year span.
I mean, you can talk all the crap you want about Dylan Sampson. That's fine. All right. So, Taylor, you are up next here at 311.
Yeah, let's keep the running back trend going. I'm going to take Jordan James. I think anytime you can get a running back for the San Francisco 49ers, you do that. I think if you can try to trade him early on once camp hits or preseason, that's where it's all about. Preseason, I love the Packers running backs. I love the 49ers running backs. I love the Baltimore running backs because a lot of times those guys will have a good performance. They'll have a long run, something like that. And you can leverage that. So can I take Jordan James now, package him with a future 3rd, and get a 2nd 2 months from now? And if the answer is yes, then this is a major win for me. I don't know if you can do that with the 311 a lot of times. So any of these running backs, like I said, take them, see if they pop.
At 312 here, we stuck with the running back. I ended up going Kyle Monangai here, a player that I liked quite a bit pre-draft. Obviously, I would have loved to see him go earlier in the NFL draft than he ended up going. But of all the places that he could have landed, he landed in one of the more wide open running back rooms. DeAndre Swift is there. Obviously not somebody that we're overly excited about, but he is likely going to get the first opportunity to get touches and all of that. But if Ben Johnson's going to run a similar scheme that he ran in Detroit, then we're going to be getting multiple running backs involved. Could that be Roschon? Sure, but he's a running back that's already had 2 seasons and shown almost nothing at this point. So I'm going to take a crack at Kyle Monangai. It sounded for a second there like the Bears might go after Nick Chubb. That didn't end up being the case, so that left this room pretty wide open. And this is a player that's a gamer. He's another one kind of similar to Jarquez where there's nothing measurable that is going to make you go, oh, man, he could be really good. But when you watch his tape, this is a player that fights and claws for every single yard. He is like an absolute I'm trying to remember, somebody called it one time it was for a different player, but it was like a bowling ball full of knives. And like that's kind of what Kyle Monangai is. He's just a bowling ball of knives. And he's just looking to like chop people up. So I love the player and the opportunity could potentially present itself here at the 312 pick. So we finished the 3rd round, the final round of the draft here. That's right. We are going 4 rounds. John, who's your pick here?
I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to get off the running back train.
Oh my.
And I'm going to go to the wide receiver, Elic Aomanor, with Tennessee. What I like about his is, once again, opportunity. Do I think that this is a wide receiver one? Do I even think that that ceiling's there? No. But is this a player who is establishing a rapport with the number 1 overall pick, is in camp with him, has been in camp with him, and there's been definitely some good things coming out. Like he's a solid player. So I expect him to earn a role, and that's something that I can use to either use that hype, use that ability. I think I like what Taylor says a lot, is finding a way to increase his value with that potential. So when there's the camp report, something comes out, I think he's a player who's in position to be able to flip for more than what you're paying for today.
All right, Tristan, who you got here at 4-2?
I also jumped off the running back train. It seemed like we had gotten to the last car, and I didn't want to keep going. So I went with Savion Williams.
So you took a running back?
Yeah, I took a Laviska Shenault type. He's not the greatest wide receiver, but he is one of the top athletes in the draft that, like, I don't really care what position they assign him. He could become a very valuable fantasy asset. Similar, like I see him very similar in a lot of ways to Taysom Hill, which is like a guy that no one really wanted to draft in a lot of drafts, but then just you put him in your lineup and he scores you more points than other positions. So it's a swing for the fences move. And at the beginning of the 4th round, his like chances of, if he hits his, he's going to get a home run rather than a single, or he could, I guess. I just think that, I talked about the Packers wide receiver room when I took Matthew Golden. Savion Williams could become a very integrated part of that offense without needing to like jump a lot of players. So for that reason, I went with him, and he was a 3rd round pick. So I think the draft capital speaks, some volumes there.
All right, Taylor, who you going at 4-3 here?
So there's still some running backs out there.
I knew you were going to do this.
I could take them.
I knew it.
But Shedeur Sanders is out there, and I believe in him. I hate to say that, depending on who's listening, but I think he's going to win the job. I think he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns at some point this year. I think there's a chance that he could be the starting quarterback for them starting next year. So if that happens and I can get him here, that's great value. Even if I don't start him a single game, maybe I can trade him for a third. Maybe he starts one game for me on a bye week because I know that he's going to start and I can put him into my lineup and I don't have to worry about an injury having to happen in order for him to get there. I think he can just win the job outright. And I think there's enough talent on that roster that whoever is their starting quarterback can actually have some fantasy success. I think Judy, Tillman, and Njoku, if Fannin shows up early in his rookie year, I think there's enough there that if Shedeur can get on the field, there's a chance that he could be a low-end QB2, which in a 1 quarterback on a bye week could get you a start. So I'll take the swing. Give me the hype, give me the excitement, give me the chains, the gold, the whatever comes with it, and I'm fine with it.
So I feel like the correct pick here should be to go back to the quarterback position, because I was thinking about whatever quarterback you didn't take, I was going to probably take. I have Tyler Shuck here. He's 2nd round quarterback. Feels like that should be a slam dunk. But realistically, when I look at this, in a 1 quarterback, in what scenario would I ever start Tyler Shuck? And I think that's the hard part, is even though I think he's going to get an opportunity to play and play very early, I just don't see a scenario that he's ever sniffing a top 12 type quarterback. And for that, I'm going to pass, which feels so wrong. and I'm going to pass on a second round guy to take an undrafted guy. What the heck am I doing here? But that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Xavier Restrepo. I really liked his tape. Really, really liked his tape. I thought he had some of the better hands in the class. Very solid route runner. Only 2 drops despite all the targets coming from Cam Ward there. And then he doesn't even get drafted. And I'm like, what the heck? What is going on? But all the reports out of camp is that he looks really good and that he is actually establishing a role for himself on this team very early. And even though it does not happen often, we do at times see undrafted free agent wide receivers become not only fantasy relevant, but actual like legitimate players and stars in the league. We see Adam Thielen, Victor Cruz, like these things do happen. So I know that this on paper does not make sense. And if you're like, look, I'm out, I want to pass, cool. It's a 4th round pick. I'm likely lighting this pick on fire either way. It's about a 3% hit rate on 4th round picks. So at least give me a guy that I liked and a guy that has shown some promise already on his team. John, you're up, man.
Yeah, I think I like that pick. I like where you're going there. All right, for me, I'm going with Bhayshul Smith. I want to roll once again. I want to know what I got. I want to see it. I look at players like the McKinnon that have won leagues during the playoffs just through their receiving ability in that offense. And this is a former wide receiver. So give me that. At this pick with that offense, he's got the chops to hold that position down. And right now, there's not a whole lot of people on that team who are even, I would say, close to that ability out of the backfield.
Awesome. Tristan, you're up. 4-6.
The problem I have in drafts is I fall in love with all of the like 3rd and 4th and 5th round players. I want as many of those picks as I can. I'm going to take a guy I'm surprised that's still on the board, and that's Jalen Royals.
I love his tape.
You can argue that there's no more secure of a situation to go to as far as quarterback play, in the history of football almost, right? Like Pat Mahomes is going to be there as long as he's playing football and playing at, I assume he's going to continue to play at a very high level for a long time. We know they drafted Worthy. We know they drafted Rashee Rice. They have Travis Kelce still. There's a lot of mouths to feed, but if you're telling me that somebody could feed them all, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. And, Rice has his off-field questions. Worthy stayed pretty healthy, but it's not like he's a well-built receiver, right? He's a little guy that he's not going to be able to see 150 targets in a season, and Jalen Royals could become that in a handful of years, right? Not that I'm predicting that, but he's got the build to be a more like a top target that sees many targets a game. So I went with him because there's several receivers I like here. I went with him because I think that his situation is the best and his talent is worthy of being picked over a guy that some other players here that weren't picked at all by NFL teams, Garrett.
I bet you any money we get more points this season out of Xavier Restrepo than Jalen Royals.
I love a good bet, so I think I'm 2 for 2 probably on bets this year with you. So I guess I could take one that maybe is in your favor to start.
That's what I like to hear. All right, Taylor, you're up.
All right. Well, there's still some running backs out there, but I like to mix it up a bit. So I'm going to take Oronde Gadsden II. So before the NFL draft happened, there were a lot of people in the fantasy community who loved the receiving profile for Gadsden. He's a guy who can come in and catch the ball with the best of them. Is he ever going to get a spot in the NFL? I don't know. He's on the Chargers. If he can flash even a little bit, he might be another 3rd round pick in the making. So give me a future 3rd for him as soon as it shows up in my inbox. I'm kind of banking on that with him. I'm not looking to actually keep him. and watch him flourish. I'm literally taking this name because I think I can trade him later on.
Nice. I went with DJ Giddens here at 408. And when you looked at him as a prospect, yeah, there were some things that need cleaned up, but freak of an athlete, like very, very good athlete, can do some fun things in the open field. But I think his value, even if he doesn't get a starting job, which obviously with Jonathan Taylor is not going to happen anytime soon, but we've seen a lot of other players just be high value backups. And I think that's what DJ Giddens is here. He's a very high value backup. If something were to happen and Jonathan Taylor hasn't, he's missed some time over the past couple of years, misses some time. This is a player like a Tyler Algier that you could just plug and play into your lineup because it's a good situation and a good offense and a good enough player that they're going to get you some fantasy points. I think that's what you're getting out of DJ Giddens, so I took him here at 4-8. We are now down to our final selections. John, who's your last guy?
All right, my last guy. Going to go with another running back, close it off. At one time was a real hot name, Ollie Gordon, but just completely had a disastrous year. I think there's a lot of factors that we could probably attribute to. Either way, he did get a spot in a position that I would be pretty excited for any running back in there. So that's why I took Ollie Gordon. Let's see what we can do. Is he gets a chance to kind of, he's not going to supplant Achane, but if he can do something, he's a great bye week, a great flex, or an easy person to know what I have and flip that player for something more valuable.
Nice. Tristan, who you got with your last pick?
I went with another guy that was drafted right near where a certain Giants running back was, and I'm getting him at the 410, and that is Ty Felton. He, in fact, I believe was a few picks before. He was a third-round pick. So the situation isn't great, right? Like he's going behind Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, but I believe in the talent, and at some point, situations can change quickly. Players can, leave for one reason or another, or offenses can support more than we expect. And at the end of the fourth round, you're telling me I can get a third-round draft pick in the NFL, who I was a big fan of, that ran, a 4.3 something in the 40-yard dash and was at the top of all of the combine numbers, basically. Like, I think he is one of – I'm probably going to end up with more Ty Felton shares than most other players because I take him at the end of every draft if I possibly can. So there were a few other guys I considered here. If it were me, I'd be trying to trade you guys with the next two picks to get the last two guys to make sure I didn't have to make a waiver claim. But yeah, Ty Felton's my pick. All
right, Taylor, who you got with your last pick?
I would happily trade my picks to Tristan. He's the so like you said, Garrett, he's our head of our NFL prospects. Basically, every rookie that's in the NFL, he's already looked at them a couple of times for us, and he's more allergic to taking rookies in the first 2 rounds of drafts. He's always trading his picks away. Tristan's always trading his, but I'm glad to know that in the 3rd and 4th I can get you Ja'Cory.
Yeah, he doesn't want the good players. He likes the bad ones. I don't get
it.
I
want the lottery tickets.
Is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt one of the 2 guys you wanted? That's who I'm taking here.
It is not. I'll tell you after Garrett makes his last pick who the names that I think should be going off the board.
Well, I'll take JCM, as not very many people are calling him at this stage, but we'll see what happens. I think Eckler clearly is on his way out of the NFL. Maybe he still has one decent go at it. Maybe he's just there for tutelage this season, and they give the young guns some more run. I think that at this point, if I can find someone tied to an elite offense, and in this case, I'm going to say that Jaden Daniels is an elite offense. So give me the upside swing.
I like it. Took a similar upside swing. I like Damien Martinez. I liked his tape. Another guy that went later on in the draft than I was necessarily expecting him to go. I thought he was going to be more like a round 4, round 5 type guy. Ends up falling all the way to the final round. But he goes to an offense that has some running backs ahead of him that are good physical players. They clearly have a type. but also those guys, their contracts run out. And if Damien Martinez shows enough, maybe he can be a part of that mix for Seattle. So with that, that wraps up our mock draft. Let me go top to bottom. I'll read them for us. Goes Ashton Jeanty, Travis Hunter, Omarion Hampton, TreVeyon Henderson, Tetairoa McMillan, Quinshon Judkins, Emeka Egbuka, Kaleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, Matthew Golden, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland. Starting round 2, we've got Cam Ward, Jack Bech, Cam Skattebo, best pick in the draft. Good job, Taylor. Jayden Higgins, Luther Burden, Tre Harris, Kyle Williams, Mason Taylor, Bhayshul Tuten, Jaxson Dart, Dylan Sampson, Jalen Milroe. In the 3rd round, we go Terrance Ferguson, Jaylen Noel, Elijah Arroyo, Pat Bryant, Devin Neal, Harold Fannin Jr., Woody Marks, Jarquez Hunter, Jaden Blue, Trevor Etienne, Jordan James, Kyle Monangai. And then to round things out in the final round, Emeka Egbuka, Savion Williams, Shedeur Sanders, Xavier Restrepo, Brashard Smith, Jalen Royals, Oronde Gadsden, DJ Giddens, Ollie Gordon, Ty Felton, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and Damien Martinez. Before we get out of here, I want to give you guys a chance to say something. I just want to compliment myself because I did not mix up Taylor or Tristan this time, which never happens. I called them the correct name the entire time, and I had to say their name so many times, and I did not mess it up, so I'm very proud of that. John, anything you want to say about your draft or anything else before you get out of here?
No, a lot of fun, guys. Thank you for having me on. It just, I think it reinforces to people, go enjoy these drafts, have fun. They only come around once a year, and once they're done, they're done. I'm already missing them. So thanks for letting me have a little mock, a little revisit of the past.
Absolutely. Tristan, anything from you?
I am very excited to see Cam Skattebo's season and career play out. I hope he's good because I don't ever want to root against a person like their success in the NFL. But the amount that I have talked about not believing that he's going to have quite the fantasy success that certain other people that shall not be named might have is going to be one of the most fun things about this year and the coming years.
I want to be
the only
clear
other
on
thing
the
I'll
record,
mention.
No, I want it real quick. Being a 3rd or day 2 or day 3 pick, and I missed it by like 3 picks on a year with like the best running backs ever. So like secretly, even though technically you get the win, secretly I count it as a win. So I just want you to know.
I will take a technical win over a secret win any day.
I don't know how secret it is now because everyone knows, but
fair.
In my mind, it's true.
The only other thing I'd say, like there's a lot of, like when your draft is over, like there's a lot of guys that have been sitting at the end of your roster that you probably should just rinse and pick up some of the names that didn't get drafted. One of the guys that the other name that I was most strongly considering was Torrey Horton, the Seahawks receiver. Like they don't have anyone. And he dropped in the draft because he had a knee injury halfway through last season. Like, I think he's one of the steals. I almost took him, but I had to take Ty Felton because he was drafted before Cam Skattebo. So I had to make sure to get that in there.
Tesla was a 3rd round pick too. He's another one that's a great pick.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of guys that, maybe they go in the 5th round of your draft if it's a 5-round draft, but still there's a lot of names that, you can flush the bottom 5 or so players on most rosters and reset for guys that might have an opportunity to flash quickly and, keep them or trade them or do something. But those guys that are just sitting on your roster doing nothing and haven't done anything aren't going to help you win.
All right. Last but not least, Taylor, anything else you want to tell us before we get out of here?
Just that we've got a lot of good stuff going on at the website. John just published his June calendar roster to-do list. So if you are looking to make some moves and you're tired of sitting on your hands, there's some suggested moves that you can make, some players to target. We've got a bunch of other stuff rolling out here in the next month. I know we're going to have some more mock drafts, things like best ball, possibly an auction mock if we can get that figured out. So make sure you're checking back every Monday for that and every Tuesday and Friday for our featured content.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Loved having you a part of this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what was the best pick of the draft other than Cam Skattebo, and what player would you have maybe moved down your list a little bit. Appreciate you guys.